Hey everybody, and welcome back to Obduction. In this video, as mentioned previously, I'm going to be going through the Villein numbering system, learning and explaining it so that you guys can know what you're getting into before we go off to Murray. And the reason why I want to do this in a separate video are twofold. First of all, I wanted to make sure that if you already knew the numbering system, or if you just weren't interested in math at all, maybe you could skip this video and go on to the next one. And therefore you wouldn't have to be bored with any of this stuff if you didn't want to. However, I encourage you to watch it because it really is quite an interesting thing to learn. And more importantly than that, the other reason why I wanted to do this is because I figured there would be some people on YouTube who would be searching for an explanation of how this numbering system worked, why it works the way it does, and how you can learn it without having to basically blow your brain out. So anyway, before we get started with this, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and examine this Villein number worksheet again, just to reread things and brush up on things once more. I've actually unlocked the cursor just so that we can use the machine back there without having to do a bunch of rotation with our neck and everything. Alright, worksheets, multi-purpose Villein control panel interface. This is the control panel that the Villeins have supplied for our use. Although they are able to control their systems via vocalizations, they have provided these control panels for other species to have limited access and control. If you have trouble, please find Noah for help. Remember, the Villein numbering system is base 4. Drag from one blob to another to form the Villein digits. Drag between blobs to disconnect. The standard panel has 5 digits, but single-digit panels are also used. Use only first digit to simulate a 1-digit panel, 0 to 3. All panels will autocorrect for invalid entries. Now what the game doesn't tell you, but you could pretty easily figure it out, is if you go over here to the cash register, you can do what we did earlier where we draw a number and it either spits out the answer or it autocorrects and then spits out the answer, as was the case earlier with the code to the mayor's office. But you can also do the opposite of this, where you just enter in a random number, let's just say 785, and then the control panel over here will morph into the correct number for you. So that's pretty cool. But this doesn't exactly answer how the numbering system works. So I'm going to spend a few minutes going over this. And in order to properly frame this, I'm going to talk about how our numbering system works. And the reason why I want to do this is because if we can understand how our numbering system works at a foundational level, then deciphering how this works is going to be a lot easier. And I think it's kind of a little bit difficult to wrap our head around it because we frequently take for granted how our numbering system works. We learn it pretty early on in elementary school, and because the concepts that ultimately drive it are a little complicated for that age group, we don't exactly get into how it works until we may be much older and we may not quite be as interested in math anymore. So I'm going to just go very briefly over how a base 10 numbering system works, which is what we use. So everyone's heard of places, right? When you form a number, let's just put in 785 again, just as our example here. You've got the ones place, you've got the tens place, and you've got the hundreds place, and so on and so forth. Thousands, 10,000s, all that stuff. Now, the reason why we call them that has to do with the way a base 10 system works and what all the places are ultimately driven by. And that is the concept of powers or exponents. So for those who may not necessarily be familiar with exponents, I'm talking about the concept in math where you take a number and you multiply it by itself a certain number of times. So in other words, when we talk about powers, the little superscripted number that's up and to the right of the number that you're writing is a power. So whenever I say 3 to the second power, I'm talking about 3 with a little 2 imposed right above and to the right of the 3. And this refers to the fact that this is 3 times itself. There's 2 3's in this equation. So 3 times 3, or 3 to the second power, or some people say 3 squared, is 9. If we were to take it up a notch and go 3 to the third power, or 3 cubed, we would be talking about 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. 3 to the fourth power would be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which would be 81. So you can understand how multiplying a number by itself gives you exponentially higher numbers. Well, in the same way, the way the concept of places and numbers work is pretty much the exact same concept when you're talking about the places and what numbers correlate to which places. So when we talk about the ones place, we're talking about the base number to the 0th power, and anything to the 0th power is equivalent to 1. Then we go up to the 10th place. Now the 10th place is basically the number as it stands by itself. So in a base 10 numbering system, it's 10, and that's it. Then we go to the hundredths place, which is 10 times 10, or 10 to the 2nd power, and that's 100. And then when we go to the thousandths place, we talk about 100 times 10, which is 10 to the 3rd power, and it goes on and on and on. So you can see how successively higher powers of 10 create more new places. And the reason for this is because the base number is not only informing what power is being used, it's also informing how many unique digits you're using. So in our base 10 numbering system, we have 10 unique digits. They are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now once we get to the number 10, we're no longer using unique digits anymore. We're using a 1 and a 0 to communicate this concept of 10. And then once we get to 100, we can't just go with 2 digits anymore. We've got to add a new place to the whole mix, and so that makes 3 digits. And this whole thing goes on as we keep getting to points where we no longer have sufficient numbers to communicate the concept. So we have to add new places each time. So for a number like 785, I just wanted to present to you how this can be broken down, because we're going to be approaching the Villein numbering system in the same way. So in a number like 785, we're basically going with 7 100ths. So in other words, the 100ths place is now being multiplied by 7. For this part, we're going with 8 10s, which is equal to 80, and then 5 1s, which is equal to 5. And we can break the number down into those chunks to build 785 ultimately. So with all of that in mind, how exactly does a base 4 numbering system work? Well, in a base 4 numbering system, as the spreadsheet alluded to, or the worksheet alluded to, we have 4 unique numbers. We have 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that's it. There's no more numbers after that. So if we were to take each of the places that we're dealing with, we've got places that are successive powers of 4. We have the 1's place for the 4 to the 0th power, and then we've got the 4's place for 4 to the 1st power, and then we've got the 16's place for 4 to the 2nd power, and then we've got the 64's place for 4 to the 3rd power, and then finally we've got the 256's place for 4 to the 4th power. So I hope that makes sense, and as you can imagine, we had to use 6 different combinations of the digits 0, 1, 2, and 3 to form numbers like this. But how exactly does this work? Because we don't really know how, well, first of all, we don't know what the individual characters for the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3 even are at this point. But on top of that, we don't even know where these digits are positioned on the control panel. So this is where the experimentation comes in. We're going to have to see what these digits are. So 0 doesn't have any connections between the blobs. And I'm not counting these things on the edges, by the way. I'm just counting the stuff here involving these blobs, these 5 right here. And you can even see in the worksheet that that's what these are all the blobs that are in play. Sometimes they connect to these ones out here, but ultimately we're only going to be using this collection of 9 blobs. So let's see what the individual characters for 1, 2, and 3 are. So 1 looks like this. It's just a simple diagonal line between this and this blob. Let's go with 2. Alright, so 2 kind of looks like a less than sign, and it involves this blob snaking down and to the left here to this one, which is the center one, and then down and to the right to this one. Alright, so 3. Okay, so this one forms a Y shape. So we can see that these three numbers, 1, 2, and 3, all use these 5 blobs right here, like this. So it seems like this digit is ultimately controlled in this square that I'm drawing around here with my mouse. So now the question is, where does the 4's place sit at? Aha, okay, so it looks like 4 starts out here. And if the pattern that we established with the 1's place holds true, then the 4's place is going to involve this square. So let's see if this is correct. We'll go with 4 times 2, which is 8. Alright, that seems to be indeed the case. 4 times 3, which is 12. Aha, okay, so that works just like this one did. So if this is the 1's place, this square right here, then this box right here is indeed the 4's place. So now the question is, where does the 16's place go? Alright, so now it looks like this square is the one in play. Let's try 32. It should be over here. Yes. And then 48, which is 16 times 3. Perfect. Okay, so this square is the 16's place. So if this pattern holds up, then more than likely this square is going to be the 64's place. So let's check that out. Perfect. All right. And then this square right here is going to be the 256's place. So let's do that. Great. Okay, so that is pretty much where the digits are placed. So let's go ahead and open up the worksheet. I've got a picture of it here on my phone. So the first 2 numbers here were just 1 and 2. So that we've already done those. The next number here, we'll go ahead and clear this out. Let's press enter here. The next number is this, like that. And then we've got this and this. So this looks like 1 in the 1's place and 2 in the 4's place. So this should equal 9. Perfect. Because this is 4 times 2, which is 8, plus 1 equals 9. So that's a 2-digit number. It's basically 2 and 1 if we were to write it out using our Arabic numerals. So the next one, it looks like this. Now this is going to be a little tricky here because this looks like a singularly connected shape here. Like this doesn't seem to have any breaks in it. But remember, we're using 2 digits here. We're actually using 3 digits technically because this one starts in the 16's place. So in this case, we're dealing with 16 plus 0 for the 4's place plus 2 here in the 1's place. So this should equal 18. Perfect. Alright, so let's move on. The next digit that we've got is this. And then we've got this down there. And then we've got this over here. So now we're involving the 64's place. So this right here is 64 because this is a 1. And then in the 16's place, we've got a 2. So this is 32, so that's a 64 plus 32, which is 96. And then up here in the 4's place, we've got 4. So this should be 100. There's nothing here in the 1's place. Perfect. We've got 100. So this would be written out as 1210. I'm just saying what those numbers are just so you can kind of visualize how this works. This is also basically the way binary works, except binary is 2 digits instead of 4 digits or 10 digits. So this one involves doing this, this, and then something like that. So here we're now using the 256's place, and this involves a 2, which totals 512. The 64's place it also has a 2, which totals 128. And those two numbers together, if I'm doing the mental math correctly, equals 640, I think. And then there's nothing here in the 16s place. There is a 2 here in the 4s place, so that adds 8, which is 648 now. And then finally we have a 1 here in the 1s place, so that's 649. Perfecto mundo. Alright, it looks like this worksheet was meant to be read left to right, up like top to bottom, so I'm probably going to go do some easier ones here for a bit. So on the right column of the worksheet, we've got this number right here, if I can draw it, like that, and then this. So this is a 1 in the 4's place and a 1 in the 1's place, which should equal 5. Perfect. Alright, so next we have got, whoops, did I just forget to, I guess I didn't press enter. Next we've just got the 2 here in the 4's place, which should equal 8. Like that. And then we've got, this is an interesting one. So up here we've got this, what appears to be a 3. Come on. I have to start here. Really? There we go. A 3 in the 4's place. And then I've got a 1 in the 1's place. So this should be 13. Excellent. Alright, so now we're going to have even more lines again. We're going to have... Okay, this is not working out too well. There we go. We're going to have a 3 here again in the 4's place. And then we're going to have a 2 in the 1's place. And then we're going to have another 2 over here in the 16's place. So this would be 2, 3, 2, which equals, for this digit, this is 32. For this digit, it's 12. So that totals 44. And for this digit, it's just 3. Or excuse me, just 2, which equals 46. Alrighty. Alright, so we just have 2 more numbers left in this worksheet. So for the second to last one, we've got another 3 here in the 4's place. Then we've got a huge zigzag of numbers here. Let's do this. Start here. Alright, so reading this, we start here in the 64's place. We get a 2, which is 128. We move on to the 16's place and just have a 1, which is 144. And then we move on to the 4's place and have a 3, which is 156. And then finally this 2 here in the 1's place, which is 158. Alright, so this number would be written 2132. And then finally, we've got a number that involves quite a few lines here and uses all of the places pretty much. We've got a 3 there, we've got a 3 there, a 2 there, and another 2 here, and nothing in the 1's place. So we've got 3 times 256, which is, let me make sure I'm doing this correctly, 768, I believe. Is that correct? 768? Yes. And then we've got this 3 here in the 64's place. And 64 times 3 is 192. So adding those two numbers together, we've got, let's see, 868, 950, 960, and then we've got this 2 here in the 16 place, which gives us another 32. So that's 992. And then finally, we've got this 2 here in the 4's place, which gives us 8, and that should total 1,000. Excellent. All right. So this number would be 33220. And that's pretty much all there is. I probably forgot to mention the ones placed on a few occasions when I was going through all these numbers here, but that should pretty much give you an idea of how Villein numbers work. So to recap, there are 5 digits in this panel, and each digit is a successive power of 4. So 4 to the 0th power is 1, 4 to the 1st power is 4, 4 to the 2nd power is 16, 4 to the 3rd power is 64, and 4 to the 4th power is 256. And you can make numbers by combining different values when you multiply each of these powers by either 0, 1, 2, and 3. Of course, 0 doesn't actually multiply, since in actual multiplication that would be just 0, so we don't draw anything there. But if we use 1, 2, or 3, we can add a certain amount under each digit to total a very specific number. I will say one of the things that was a little bit confusing about this at first was that the number that was the access code for the mayor's office was not an actual number. It was a number that had to be auto-corrected. But once you do think about the Villein numbers in terms that correlate to our numbering system, I think it becomes a little bit easier to understand. And it definitely gives you a little bit more appreciation for how our numbering system works as well. So that's pretty much all I've got for the Villein numbers. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, comment, or subscribe, or tell your friends. I'm always glad to help with these sorts of things. Or if you have any additional questions about how the numbers work, or just are generally confused about it, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll do my best to explain. And that's pretty much it. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and start heading toward Marais and start exploring there. So until then, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you on the flip side.